Narrator's voice, calm but eerie tone. You ever have one of those moments when something feels off? Not just a little strange, but so deeply unsettling that your whole body tenses up without knowing why. I used to think those feelings were just paranoia, until the night my son began sleepwalking, and what started as an innocent childhood habit quickly unraveled into something I still struggle to explain. It began when my eldest son, Nathan, was about 8 or 9. At first, it seemed harmless. I'd find him wandering the house late at night, his body moving, but his mind somewhere else. If you've ever lived with a sleepwalker, you know what I mean. Their eyes are open, but they're not really seeing you. It's like they're looking past you, into something you can't see. Most nights, I'd gently guide him back to bed, whispering that everything was fine, and by morning, he wouldn't remember a thing. But there was one particular night, that changed everything. I remember it was cold, the kind of cold that settles deep into the walls of the house. I woke up to a faint tapping sound. At first, I thought it was the wind rattling a loose shutter, but the rhythm was wrong, too steady, too deliberate. Tap, tap, tap. I sat up, straining to listen. The sound was soft, barely loud enough to hear, but it was coming from the hallway. My husband was fast asleep beside me, and I didn't want to wake him, so I got up and crept toward the door. That's when I saw him. Nathan, standing in the dark, his forehead knocking lightly against the wall. Tap, tap, tap. His fingertips brushed the surface like he was searching for something, or maybe, trying to push through. I called his name. Nathan? My voice came out softer than I meant it to, like some instinct warned me not to be too loud. He didn't react. He just kept tapping. I stepped closer and gently placed a hand on his shoulder. Sweetheart, let's go back to bed. His body was warm beneath my touch, but his skin was ice cold, and as I turned him away from the wall, something about his face made my stomach drop. His eyes. They were wide open, but it wasn't sleep in them. No, what I saw in my son's eyes was something else, something I still can't forget. Fear. Not like a bad dream, not even like he was lost. It was deeper than that, primal, like something was watching him. Or worse, something had followed him. I tucked him back into bed and stayed with him until his breathing slowed, until his face relaxed into sleep. And for a while, I convinced myself it was just a weird phase. Kids do strange things. They grow out of it, right? Except Nathan didn't. It got worse. A few weeks later, the tapping started again, but this time, it wasn't just on the walls. I woke to the sound of something lightly rapping against the window pane, our bedroom window. The thing is, Nathan couldn't reach that window, not without a ladder. And yet, when I turned my head, I saw him standing there, his face pressed to the glass. I remember feeling a chill race down my spine. I called his name again, but his head twitched, just slightly, like he'd heard something else, something outside. I should have pulled him away. I should have closed the blinds and locked the doors, but instead, I looked out the window. And there, standing at the edge of our yard, was a figure. At first, I thought it was a shadow, some trick of the moonlight, but the longer I stared, the more I realized it wasn't. It was a man. He stood just beyond the fence, perfectly still, watching. I reached for Nathan, but when I touched his shoulder, he flinched, like my hand burned him, and when he turned to face me, his mouth moved, but the voice that came out wasn't his. A low, rasping whisper, words I didn't understand. I grabbed him and shook him harder than I meant to, desperation clawing at my throat. Nathan, wake up. And then, just like that, he did. His body went slack, and his eyes fluttered closed as I carried him back to bed. By morning, he remembered nothing, but I couldn't forget. Because when I checked the yard the next day, there were no footprints, no sign that anyone had been there. And yet, the tapping didn't stop. Night after night, it returned, sometimes on the walls, sometimes at the windows, but the worst, was the night I woke up to the sound of my bedroom door, slowly creaking open. I thought it was Nathan. I thought I'd find him standing there again, but when I looked, there was nothing. Just the empty hallway. And yet, I swear, I could still hear the sound. Soft, steady, coming from somewhere deeper in the house. That's when I realized. It wasn't my son who had been sleepwalking anymore. It was something else. And whatever it was, it wanted in.